Arcadian Vanguard presents the Wrestling News and your daily wrestling newscast for Wednesday, November 8th, 2023. Good morning, I'm Mike Sempervive. We begin today with NXT, which aired live last night on USA Network from the WWE Performance Center in Orlando, Florida. In the main event, Dijak defeated Tyler Bate to qualify for the Men's Iron Survivor Challenge to take place at NXT Deadline on December 9th. Earlier in the night, Tiffany Stratton qualified for the Women's Iron Survivor Challenge by defeating Fallon Henley.
And now, prettiest moonsault ever! And Stratton got all of it and is the first to qualify.
Good night.
For Deadline.
Here is your winner, Tiffany Stratton!
In the opening match, Noam Dar retained the NXT Heritage Cup over Akira Tozawa, scoring the third and deciding pinfall in the 5th round.
Back into the ring. Look at what's going on with Alpha Academy. The referee did not see Lash Legend. Tozawa didn't see the Nova Roller. And we just saw Noam Dar retain.
Here is your winner, and still the NXT Heritage Cup champion, Noam Dar!
Unreal.
Yes, man.
Dar had scored the first fall on Tozawa in the second round, while Tozawa evened it up by submission for the second fall in round 4. In other results, Otis beat Drew Gulak, Braun Breaker topped Von Wagner, Roxanne Perez and Kehlani Jordan beat Lola Vice and Elektra Lopez, and Xia Li arrived in NXT to lay down a challenge for Lyra Valkyria's NXT Women's title. In financial news, TKO Group Holdings, the parent company of WWE and UFC, released its third quarter earnings in a press release yesterday, detailing revenue of $449.1 million with a net income of $22 million. UFC accounted for $397.5 million of total revenue, while WWE accounted for $51.6 million. WWE's revenue contribution only covered the period from when the company's sale was finalized on September 12th through the end of quarter 3 on September 30th. WWE's total revenue for all of quarter 3, including the period before the TKO merger, came to $287.3 million. Said TKO CEO Ari Emanuel, quote, "Since launching TKO on September 12th, our teams at WWE, UFC, and Endeavor have been focused on integration and executing our strategy. This includes identifying cost synergies at the high end of the range we guided, bringing events to new international markets including Saudi Arabia and Australia, delivering media rights increases for WWE, and closing the largest global partnership deal ever for UFC with AB InBev. We remain bullish about TKO's ability to accelerate growth and unlock long-term value for shareholders," end quote. TKO's gross debut as of September 30th was listed at $2.773 billion. In ratings news, last Monday's episode of Monday Night Raw drew a total audience of 1.522 million to USA Network, according to WrestleNomics. That total is up 9% from the previous week's overnight number. In the key 18 to 49-year-old demographic, the rating was 0.47, also up from last week's key demo rating of 0.43. AEW Collision lost nearly a quarter of its viewership for last Saturday night's episode, with 366,000 tuning in to watch on TNT, according to WrestleNomics. That's a drop of 22% from the previous week's audience. In the key 18 to 49-year-old demographic, the rating was 0.09, down 1/3 from the previous week's key demo rating of 0.13. And in more NXT news, the Black and Gold brand is set to switch from USA Network to the CW, according to an official statement released yesterday. NXT is scheduled to debut on the CW syndicated network in October of 2024, which would be the start of a 5-year contract with the broadcast channel. The new deal is for approximately double NXT's previous deal with USA, according to a Deadline report. NXT has aired on USA Network since 2019, and it was recently reported that NBC Universal was not interested in renewing the show when the current contract came up. The news of NXT's CW deal also comes shortly after the reports of a potential deal between the CW and the NWA The news of NWA CW deal also comes shortly after reports of a potential deal between the CW and the NWA possibly being derailed by a controversial depiction of cocaine use during the NWA's Salmon pay-per-view last month. And before we leave you today, we'd like to remind you that however you consume your content, you can find the wrestling news 24 hours a day and 7 days a week across social media. On Twitter, follow us at Wrestling News AV. Our Facebook page is also Wrestling News AV. The Wrestling News can also be found on the Arcadian Vanguard YouTube page. And for those who utilize Amazon Echo devices, just tell Alexa to play the Wrestling News podcast. And remember to make sure you add podcast at the end. Once again, for daily updates, breaking news, and more, follow the Wrestling News across social media. And that's the news for today. If anything happens, we will be here to tell you about it. No clickbait, no paywall, just the Wrestling News. The Wrestling News is a division of Arcadian Vanguard, and the Wrestling Newscast is a production of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network.